What happens when a member of the British royal family decides they know better than one of America's most beloved late-night hosts? Well, you get one of the most uncomfortable television moments ever captured on camera. Before we dive into this absolute train wreck, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because this story is going to leave you speechless. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was supposed to be just another routine celebrity interview. Prince Harry had been making his rounds on the American talk show circuit, promoting his latest charitable endeavor, and attempting to repair his public image. The booking seemed straightforward enough, a soft interview about his transition to life in California and his ongoing philanthropic work. What the producers didn't anticipate was that Harry would arrive at the Ed Sullivan Theater with an agenda of his own. Stephen Colbert, known for his sharp wit and ability to handle even the most difficult guests with professional grace, welcomed Prince Harry onto the iconic stage with his trademark enthusiasm. The audience applauded politely as Harry took his seat, adjusting his tie with what seemed like nervous energy. "Your Royal Highness, welcome to The Late Show," Colbert began with a warm smile. "It's great to have you here in New York." Harry's response immediately set an uncomfortable tone. "Actually, Stephen, I'd prefer if you just called me Harry. The whole royal title thing, it's a bit outdated, don't you think? Especially here in America, where you fought a whole war to get rid of us." The audience let out a few scattered chuckles, but Colbert's expression shifted slightly. He had interviewed countless politicians, celebrities, and public figures, and he could sense when someone was trying to control the narrative from the very first exchange. "Of course, Harry, it is," Colbert replied diplomatically. "So tell us about your new initiative working with veterans. It's something you've been passionate about for years." But instead of discussing his charitable work, Harry leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "You know, Stephen, before we talk about that, I have to say I'm a bit disappointed in some of the coverage your show has given to my family over the years. Some of the jokes, the commentary, it's been pretty unfair." The studio audience fell silent. This wasn't how celebrity interviews typically went on late-night television. Colbert, maintaining his composure, raised an eyebrow. "Well, Harry, comedy often involves poking fun at public figures. It comes with the territory of being in the public eye. We've made jokes about everyone from presidents to pop stars. But there's a difference between comedy and cruelty, isn't there?" Harry shot back, his voice taking on an edge. "When you make jokes about my mother's death, about my struggles with mental health, about my wife's treatment by the British press, that crosses a line." Colbert straightened in his chair. "I think you might be confusing our show with others. Harry, we've always been respectful when discussing serious topics like mental health and loss." "Have you, though?" Harry challenged, pulling out his phone. "Because I have some clips here that suggest otherwise." The tension in the studio was palpable. Audience members began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This was supposed to be a light, promotional interview, not a confrontation. Colbert's producers in the control room were frantically trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. "Harry, I'm not sure this is the direction we want to take this interview," Colbert said calmly but firmly. "Why don't we focus on the positive work you're doing?" "No, I think this is exactly what we need to talk about," Harry insisted, his voice rising. "You American talk show hosts think you can say whatever you want about the British royal family. Because we're foreign, because we can't fight back. Well, I'm here to fight back." Colbert looked directly into the camera, then back at Harry. "I respect your passion, but I think you might have some misconceptions about what we do here. Our writers work very hard to find the line between humor and harm." "Your writers?" Harry scoffed. "Do any of your writers understand what it's like to lose a parent in the public eye? Do they know what it's like to have their every move scrutinized and mocked? Because if they did, they might think twice before writing some of those jokes." The host took a deep breath. "Harry, I lost my father when I was 10 years old. Many people on our staff have experienced loss, trauma, and public scrutiny in their own ways. Comedy has always been a way for people to process difficult emotions and situations. Don't you dare compare your situation to mine, Harry snapped. Your father wasn't chased to his death by photographers. You didn't have to walk behind his coffin while millions of people watched on television. The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row looked genuinely shocked by the prince's aggressive tone. Colbert remained calm, but his jaw tightened slightly. You're absolutely right. I didn't experience that, Colbert replied evenly. And I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. But attacking the people trying to have a conversation with you isn't going to solve anything. Harry stood up from his chair abruptly. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm defending my family. Something I should have done years ago instead of sitting back and letting people like you profit from our pain. People like me? Colbert asked, his voice carrying a hint of steel now. Harry, I think you need to take a step back here. No, I think you need to take a step back, Harry fired back, pointing his finger at the host. You sit behind this desk every night making jokes about people you've never met, families you don't understand, situations you couldn't possibly comprehend. And then when someone calls you out on it, you act like the victim. Colbert stood up as well, his professional demeanor beginning to crack. I've been doing this for 20 years, Harry. I've interviewed presidents, prime ministers, Nobel Prize, winners, and yes, members of your family. I've never had someone come on my show and launch into a personal attack like this. Maybe that's because no one has had the courage to tell you the truth before, Harry shot back. Maybe everyone else was too polite, too British, too concerned about maintaining appearances. Well, I'm not. The studio was dead silent except for the hum of the cameras still rolling. Producers were making frantic hand gestures from the sidelines, but neither man was backing down. Colbert slowly sat back down, gesturing for Harry to do the same. Look, why don't we start over? You came here to talk about your veterans program, right? Let's focus on that. But Harry remained standing, his face flushed with anger. You think you can just sweep this under the rug? Pretend like nothing happened? That's exactly the problem with people like you, Stephen. You dish it out, but you can't take it when someone pushes back. Harry, I'm trying to give you an opportunity to reset here, Colbert said, his patience clearly wearing thin. But if you want to continue down this path, we can end the interview right now. Oh, so now you're threatening me? Harry laughed, bitterly. The great Stephen Colbert can't handle a little criticism, so he's going to kick off the prince? That'll make for great headlines, won't it? Colbert's eyes narrowed. Nobody is threatening anybody. I'm trying to salvage what was supposed to be a conversation about your charitable work. But you seem more interested in settling some imaginary score? Imaginary? Harry's voice cracked with indignation. 3 weeks ago, your show ran a segment comparing my wife to a Hollywood actress who's known for being difficult to work with. You called it Duchess Difficult. Ring any bells? The host paused, genuinely trying to recall the segment. Harry, we do comedy sketches about public figures all the time. If there was a segment that crossed a line, I apologize, but I honestly don't remember the specific bit you're referring to. Of course you don't remember, Harry said, pacing behind his chair now. It's just another throwaway joke to you. But that throwaway joke gets picked up by tabloids around the world. It gets dissected on social media. It becomes part of the narrative that follows my wife everywhere she goes. Colbert leaned forward. Harry, I understand that media coverage can be overwhelming, but you chose to be public figures. You chose to do interviews, write books, sign deals with streaming platforms. You can't have it both ways. We chose to tell our own story, Harry exploded. There's a difference between controlling your own narrative and being the punchline in someone else's monologue. And what about everyone else's right to comment on public figures? Colbert shot back, his own voice rising for the first time. What about freedom of speech? What about the fact that comedy has always been a way to hold powerful people accountable? Harry stopped pacing and stared directly at Colbert. Accountable for what exactly? What did my wife do that requires holding her accountable? What did I do? We left the institution. We moved to another country. We're trying to build our own lives. Why can't you people just leave us alone? Because you won't let us, Colbert said, standing up again. You do interviews every few months. You write books. You make documentaries. You go on podcasts. You can't simultaneously court media attention and complain about media attention. So we're not allowed to defend ourselves? Harry asked incredulously. We're supposed to just sit there and take whatever garbage gets thrown at us? You're allowed to do whatever you want, Colbert replied firmly. But you don't get to come on my show and attack me personally for doing my job. You don't get to lecture me about comedy when you've benefited from media attention your entire adult life. Harry's face went red. Benefited? You think I've benefited from having my every move scrutinized? From having my mother's death turned into tabloid fodder? From having my military service questioned because of my family name? I think you've used your platform when it suited you and complained about it when it didn't, Colbert said bluntly. And right now, you're using my platform to grandstand, and I'm not going to sit here and let you do it. The audience was completely silent. Several people in the front rows were filming with their phones, despite security's attempts to stop them. This was not going to stay contained to the studio. Grandstanding? Harry repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. I'm trying to have an honest conversation about the damage that irresponsible media coverage does to real people, but I guess that's too complicated for your American audience to understand. The entire studio seemed to inhale sharply. Even the camera operators looked shocked. Colbert's expression went ice cold. "Excuse me?" Colbert said quietly, dangerously. Harry seemed to realize he had crossed a line, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. You heard me. American late night. Television thrives on cheap shots and easy targets. You don't want to do the hard work of actual journalism or meaningful commentary. You just want quick laughs at other people's expense. Get out, Colbert said simply. What? I said get out. This interview is over. Harry crossed his arms defiantly. You can't just kick me off your show. Watch me, Colbert replied, signaling to his producers off camera. Security. You're really going to have me escorted out? Harry asked, seeming genuinely surprised by the turn of events. You insulted my audience, my staff, and my country, Colbert said, his professional mask completely dropped now. You came on my show with an agenda to pick a fight, and when I tried to redirect the conversation multiple times, you kept pushing. So yes, I'm having you escorted out. 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the stage. Harry looked around. The studio, perhaps finally realizing how far things had escalated. This is ridiculous, Harry muttered, but he started walking toward the exit. What's ridiculous, Colbert called after him, is that you had a platform to talk about veterans, mental health, charitable work, things that actually matter, and instead you chose to waste everyone's time with a temper tantrum. Harry stopped and turned back. A temper tantrum? I was trying to have a serious conversation about media responsibility. No, Colbert said firmly. You were trying to make yourself the victim. Again. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Harry opened, his mouth to respond, then seemed to think better of it. He turned and walked off the stage, followed by the security guards. But Harry wasn't finished. Just as he reached the edge of the stage, he spun around one final time, his face contorted with rage. You know what, Stephen? You want to know the real truth about American late-night comedy? You're all the same. You, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, all of you. You pretend to be edgy and relevant, but you're just establishment puppets afraid to ask real questions or challenge real power. Colbert had been walking back to his desk, ready to salvage what remained of the show, but Harry's words stopped, him cold. He turned around slowly, his expression darker than anyone in the studio had ever seen. Real power? Colbert asked, his voice eerily calm. You want to talk about real power? You're a prince, Harry. You were born into wealth and privilege that 99% of the world will never experience. You've never had a real job, never struggled to pay rent, never wondered where your next meal was coming from. And you want to lecture me about challenging power? Harry stepped back onto the stage, the security guards looking uncertain about whether to intervene. I gave up that privilege. I walked away from all of that. You gave up a title, Colbert shot back. You still live in a mansion in Montecito. You still have more money than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. You still get paid millions of dollars to complain about how hard your life is. That's not giving up privilege. That's rebranding it. The audience was riveted. This had gone far beyond an uncomfortable interview into something none of them had ever witnessed on television before. You don't know what you're talking about, Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. You have no idea what I've sacrificed, what I've given up to speak my truth. Your truth? Colbert laughed bitterly. Harry, your truth changes depending on which microphone you're standing in front of. One day you're grateful for your royal upbringing. The next day you're a victim of it. One day you want privacy. The next day you're on every talk show in America. Which truth are we supposed to believe? Harry's hands were clenched into fists. Now, at least I'm trying to make a difference in the world. What are you doing besides making jokes for rich people in fancy suits? I'm doing my job, Colbert replied icily. I'm entertaining people who work hard all day and want to laugh for an hour before they go to bed. I'm not pretending to be a savior or a victim or anything other than what I am. Can you say the same? I've served my country in combat. Harry spat. I've raised millions for charity. I've used my platform to highlight important causes. What have you done besides sit behind a desk and mock people? Colbert stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried throughout the entire studio. I've earned everything I have, Harry. Every job, every opportunity, every dollar. I didn't inherit it from my grandmother. I didn't get it because of my bloodline. I got it because I worked for it. The words hit Harry like a physical blow. His face went pale, then flushed red again. How dare you? He whispered. How dare I what? Tell the truth? Point out that you're standing in a television studio in New York City, being paid to promote your latest project, complaining about the very system that made that possible. Harry looked around the studio wildly, as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The cameras still rolling, the audience watching his every move, the lights blazing down on him. He seemed to realize finally how this all looked. This isn't what I wanted, he said quietly, almost to himself. Then what did you want, Harry? Colbert asked, his voice softening slightly. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you wanted to pick a fight, get some headlines, and play the victim card one more time. Harry's shoulders sagged. For a moment he looked less like an angry prince and more like a confused, lost man. But then his spine straightened again, and the anger returned. I wanted respect, he said finally. I wanted someone in this industry to acknowledge that your jokes have consequences, that your comedy affects real people. And I wanted a guest who could have an adult conversation about their work without turning my show into a therapy session, Colbert replied. I guess we're both disappointed. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Harry stood there for what felt like an eternity, clearly struggling with whether to continue the fight or walk away. Finally, he made his choice. You're right about one thing, Stephen, Harry said, his voice cold and controlled again. This interview is over, but don't think for a second that this ends here. The world is going to see exactly who you really are. They already do, Colbert replied calmly. They see me every night at 11:30. The question is, what are they going to see when they look at you after tonight? Harry had no answer for that. He turned and walked off the stage for the final time, the security guards trailing behind him. The studio doors slammed shut with a sound that echoed through the theater like a gunshot. Colbert stood alone on the stage for a long moment, running, his hands through his hair. When he finally looked up at the audience, his expression was a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. "Well," he said quietly, "that wasn't in the pre-interview notes." A few nervous laughs rippled through the audience, but the mood was still tense. Colbert walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break," he announced. "When we come back, we'll have some music from our friends at Stay Human, and hopefully a much more normal rest of the show." As the cameras stopped rolling and the audience sat in stunned silence, everyone in the Ed Sullivan Theater knew they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come. The prince who had demanded respect had instead revealed himself to be everything his critics claimed he was: petulant, entitled, and utterly unable to handle even the gentlest pushback. What started as a routine celebrity interview had become a masterclass in how quickly someone could destroy their own reputation on live television. And it was all captured on camera for the world to see. So there you have it, one of the most explosive celebrity meltdowns ever caught on tape. What do you think went wrong? Was Harry justified in his anger, or did he completely lose control? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.